So happy Wednesday, everybody. Thanks for joining us, whatever part of the country you're in and what time zone you're in. Good morning, good afternoon, whatever the case may be. We're excited. We have a really interesting discussion today. It's something that is certainly pretty much on every organization's mind in terms of how to approach moving employees back to the office now that we've had this work from home situation for the last 12 to 14 months or so. And it's definitely one that we're hearing and talking a lot about with our own client base. And so we thought it might provide some value and some insight to have this discussion and put this out there. So joining me today on the panel, I have two of my colleagues, which I'm really honored to have join me, and they both have a lot of experience in workplace strategy, workplace design, and have really for the last, I guess, decade or more, have really been working with financial institutions on those types of workplace strategies. So I have Mark Alguard, who's our president and director of client strategy. I am Michael Downs, our VP of Client Solutions, and I have Jenny Bengeult, who's EVP and Director of Design. Just to set the background, you know, obviously this is a discussion you can't avoid. It's in terms of what's going on in the workplace and how people are addressing the pandemic. And what we've seen, you know, with some of these flagship large brand organizations, we've seen kind of a mixed bag, right? Early on, you had organizations like Amazon and Microsoft, you know, really move quickly to say, we're going to go completely remote and, you know, shut down our physical offices for the most part. And then now, you know, you're seeing a little bit of a retraction on that. You know, Amazon is now, you know, very adamant that, you know, the office is going to be a key component of their culture. So the point there being everyone, including organizations like Square that are saying, hey, we're going to have everyone remote indefinitely. The takeaway there is that it's about flexibility, and people, as things are developing, as more data is coming in, that people are adapting and shifting as necessary for their organization. And the only other point on this is that obviously we want to look to, or we encourage people to look to these organizations that are kind of on the forefront for leadership, if you will, but also recognizing, you know, if you're a bank or credit union, your business is obviously much different than Twitter or Microsoft. So, and then ultimately what we're talking about, this has really been forced. It wasn't obviously a planned pandemic, but it's turned into a really big experiment on working from home. And at the end of the day, everyone needs to, and has been, realizing that they need to be very flexible, and not only now, but going forward. And what we're seeing as an organization are the ones that are kind of taking the lead around workplace strategy. They're really getting the entire organization involved in terms of data points from employees, leadership, and attacking this both from bottom up as well as top down. So with that, I just wanted to kind of hit those notes. I wanted to really jump into our discussion. And Mark, I'll start off with you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and make everybody look at our ugly faces. But if we
speak for yourself.
Is it just me?
Yeah, no, just kidding. Go ahead, Michael.
Am I the only one that thinks I'm?
No.
So just to kick it off, Mark, I mean, as a starting point, as you are talking to plenty of banks, credit unions around the country, what's kind of the general theme, or is there anything that has surprised you or is surprising you in general about how people are addressing it?
That's a good question. I think I'm honestly pretty surprised by the wide range of approaches out there. I mean, you had two examples, right? Amazon recently saying, office-centric culture, we're going back to the office, and then Square several months ago, and that kind of, I'll call it a bandwagon of organizations last summer who were really saying, hey, you guys can work remotely as long as you want to, right? Again, those marquee institutions, I think it's a lot of jockeying around employee talent, right? Trying to kind of gauge what is going to give them a step up in the recruitment wars. That's my sense. But I think what I'm surprised about for banks and credit unions is just kind of the wide range of approaches here. There was an article this week, and might have been last week, in creditunions.com, where they interviewed about 7 or 8 different executives from different organizations, and there was such a array of approaches to this. I mean, from ones who the majority of their employees haven't even stepped into the office for a year. Then there were others who brought their entire staff back in June 2020, and it's been pretty status quo. And then I think a lot of them that are starting to now dip their toes in this idea of hybrid work. So like I said, I think, major factor being this I'll say a competition for employees, but for the smaller organizations, for the banks and credit unions, I really think it's about, it's about kind of responding to employee needs, and especially in this time right now, where things are still in flux, childcare, schooling, your personal situation around the disease. So it's very interesting. But I also think that there's other factors in there too. People are starting to think about cost savings, right? Is this a way we can save cost on our real estate footprint? And then also there's this very interesting, I think, like cultural, and I don't mean the culture of the organization, but maybe more the culture of the community in the area, right? I've noticed that in certain areas, they're much more likely to kind of go along with what other businesses are doing in the area and bring the employees back in. So it's interesting to me, but I think in general, if I could say one commonality is I think people are really thinking pretty hard about this, which is good. They're kind of taking it slow, trying to come up with the right response.
Yeah. So let's talk about a word that gets it does get overused quite a bit, but this, the concept of strategy. And I'd love to just get your take on it, because I know as a firm, we're getting a lot of inquiries and requests from financial institutions that want help with a strategy. So I'd love to hear just kind of what you really mean, or what you feel like a workplace strategy truly encompasses.
I think right now it is, it really is this idea that your workplace, when I say workplace, I'm talking about the physical work environment, right? Not the culture, not your processes and your ways of doing things, your structure, but I'm really talking about the physical workplace environment. It's just this idea that your environments can be a net positive influencer on the strategic objectives of the organization, right? And so are you focused on growth, on service, on innovation, on being more productive, acquiring talent, right? We want to think about what conditions are going to help these things happen. We know environments impact well-being, which in turn impacts everything from engagement to retention, right? And we also know that environments can sponsor better collaboration between employees. They can help people connect to the culture more easily, you can help, build strong relationships amongst employees, right? There's a myriad of facets, right? And so that's what workplace strategy is all about. And then what we have now is this kind of really new factor being thrown into the mix, and that's this, work from home experience. And we're talking about, will your employees have this jarring experience or not when they return? It really is so much about your employee experience. Employees, in general, I think a lot of data out there on this. I think it's maybe a relatively easy item to collect data on, right? A lot of employees are saying, God, things are working pretty well, pretty good experience working from home. And many want to be able to continue to do that in some form for some time, right? It's a really complex factor, I think, that we're adding in. But the issue being that in the short term, we have performance data around employees working from home, but the data is really still out on what is the impact of working from home kind of in the longer term on organizational performance, right? And that's the workplace strategy, the decision that needs to be made now is how will a long-term working model with teams perhaps away from the office or in a hybrid form impact the organizational performance, again, in the long term. I do think we're seeing a lot of organizations gravitate towards this hybrid model because they think it might be the least jarring or the way to get the best of both worlds. But it's fraught, take culture, for example, right? I think when you took employees working in together in an organization who had already been inoculated with the culture, right, and you sent them out to work from home for a year, they're still going to have the residual connection to the culture. But as time goes on and you're starting to hire and onboard employees, perhaps virtually, that inoculation with the culture doesn't exist, right? So then you have to think about, well, what is our workplace strategy to help these things, happen and come together?
Right. So just on the point of data, there's some, more and more data is, I think, starting to emerge. As I know Microsoft has a really interesting study out there. We've done our own research with Filene at Momentum, but do you think the data is not trustworthy, but is it a little bit skewed at this point in terms of work from home? And
well, I don't know if I would say it's skewed. I think it's, really probably quite accurate. People are reporting certain things working really well. The ability to concentrate, higher levels of comfort, right? Satisfaction. I'm not surprised. I think you have greater control over your environment when you're working from home. But what we have to, I think the issue really is that is just one data point, right? And so, and it's, I would say, the easiest to gather data point. But what is the impact of remote work and working from home, again, on organizational performance? I don't think, for the most part, that data exists yet. It's just we haven't had time to see what the longer term impacts are. Yeah. So I think that's really the issue with data is, I think you would call that a selection bias, right? If you only use your self-reported employee data in making a strategy, you are choosing not to factor in other data points that are also very relevant. And even if they are difficult to gather, you're going to have to find a way to factor those decision points in.
Yeah. So from a work from home standpoint, as people are thinking about, organizations are trying to develop a strategy, and they're thinking about how we bring people back. And to your point, there are certainly things that people enjoy and like about the work from home experience. Are there ways that credit unions and banks can find a way to incorporate those aspects back into the office environment? So whatever that may be, if I'm an employee and I really like my work from home experience, how can an organization maybe offer some of those same things back in the office environment?
I'm going to ask Jenny to answer that one.
Yeah, I think I was, I think we're getting into kind of tactics that we can take from work from home and take those back into the office, right? So, I mean, obviously the thing that people enjoy most about work from home, or what most people enjoy most from work from home, is the ability to personalize and customize your work setting so that it really works for you, right? And I think of this in terms of how I work from home versus how I work in the office. And when we were at first all sent to work from home, I had my little laptop and I made do at my dining room table in a very hard chair, and I was crunched over and started to have neck issues, and I was getting by. I wasn't trying to create a great environment for myself at home. But now I've set up a home office in a separate room. I can look out a window. I can open that window and get fresh air when I want. There's 3 different lights in that room that I can turn it on and off based on the light level that I want. I can adjust the temperature. I can wear my favorite slippers. I can put a blanket on my lap. I can have my dogs right next to me. I can close the door when I need more privacy, right? So it's taking some of those elements and bringing them that I most enjoy, that make my home office very conducive to getting work done, and bringing those into the office environment when people do come back, giving them the flexibility to really adapt a space or work out of a space that best works for their needs over the course of the day, whatever that looks like. So it doesn't necessarily need to be everything, or maybe you would provide everybody with slippers, I don't know, but it, giving them the ability to adjust a light level in a room or adjust the amount of privacy they need, I think are all going to be factors that will really help in getting people to use an office space as it best works for them in the future.
Yeah. Hey, Mark, just to circle back with you real quick. I mean, so all this data is being, kind of coming in, and organizations are evaluating different aspects. So in your opinion, is there kind of one thing that organizations really can't afford to overlook? Like, of all the things that we need to assess, we need to make sure and really get a handle on this particular aspect.
Well, I think definitely. I mean, after a year of working remotely or more, I think that it's absolutely this idea of social capital and relationships, right? That it is really hard to make those debits and credits on the social capital account when you're working remotely, right? There's so much to face-to-face communication and the way people share information, even non-verbally, right? But also there's so much value in getting to know each other in the workplace, because it's through those kind of less formal connections that people get a whole lot of work done. They build these kind of levels of trust that then allows them to ask each other for help when they're having a problem. It's more easy for them to see when someone needs help and to offer that assistance, but also things like having connections to your boss, right, or to your employees, and finding opportunities for yourself in the organization to grow in the organization, right? So I think that just can't overlook, in these strategies, can't overlook how important the not work aspect is, right? The whole social and the whole social capital concept.
Communications become so formal during this time, right? You have to schedule your question. You have to schedule your time with your colleagues to connect, or your boss, versus just, going and tapping on somebody's, desk and saying, hey, I have a quick question. Can I run this by you? Or 5 minutes later, realizing you have a follow-up question or something like that.
And then the communication is kind of fraught or anxiety filled too. I mean, if you don't hear back quickly, you're making up these stories like, well, what did I do wrong? Or what's missing? What did I forget to do? Did I annoy so-and-so? And it's just, no, they were actually walking the dog while you were waiting for a response to your email. So yeah, I totally agree with that.
Yeah. Well, shifting just a little bit, I mean, with everyone, well, not everyone, but a large portion of everyone working remote. One concept I've heard along the way is this idea of we need to give employees a compelling reason to want to come back to the office. And maybe Jenny, you or Mark, you can kind of talk about, ideas around that and that concept of giving some people a compelling reason to come to the office.
Yeah, I mean, this all ties back to employee experience, right? And creating a better experience and getting people excited. As we touched on, most people have really enjoyed working from home. They found they can do their individual, routine tasks or individual focused work very well at home. They can connect when they need to, and they can take a break when they want to as well, or get a little laundry done, whatever that looks like. But we need to get employees excited to come back or give them a reason to come back. And this just leads to a more engaging and supportive experience overall. There needs to be tools, resources, just better work environments in place for employees to come back to. It's not just okay to be okay anymore. You want it to be really a good work environment that excels over the home work environment. And that's going to encourage people to come back and have a space that they really enjoy to work out of.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little pathetic that when you compare the data between individuals' experience working from an office, which is designed for knowledge work, compared to working from the kitchen table, that people are rating their experience working from the kitchen table as better, right? We really need to dive into that and figure out what is lacking in our corporate office environments that could be working better. And I'll add to that too, I do think that there's this huge opportunity in the workplace to help people feel valued, cared for, invested in, right? For things to be stimulated, engaged with. I think there's a real opportunity to get people excited and engaged in the office. And again, as a reason to get people to come back in and engage with your culture and mission a little bit better.
Yeah. Are you seeing more emphasis placed on, well-being, employee well-being, as are there things being done or more emphasis and discussion around well-being? It's certainly important, but obviously the situation that we're in now, are people even emphasizing that even more?
I would say yes, absolutely. I think, we took a lot of our spaces for granted previously. We assumed they were safe. We assumed that, we had healthy environments, and a lot of them still are. But I think there's this element of trust that was taken away from us, and we need to reinstill trust into our organizations and the places we ask people to work out of. And what that's led to is a greater emphasis on healthy and safe spaces, whether through certification programs or just very transparent and well communicated well-being strategies. So I would say, yes, we are seeing an uptick in those. And I would say not only do you need a well-being or wellness strategy, but you need a solid communication plan around it, right? So it doesn't matter if it's as simple as, hey, we increased, how often the janitor comes through our space, or hey, we've invested in better cleaning supplies. It could be as simple as that. It just needs to be communicated out to everybody so that they know that, again, that you are investing in them, that you care about the spaces they inhabit. But we're also seeing, investments in more complex and sophisticated HVAC systems that bring in increased outdoor air or increased air infiltration. We're seeing increases in greenery and even just the type of space, or a more aesthetically pleasing or branded space. All these show this is kind of the softer side of well-being, but it just shows an investment in people and that you care about the people and the types of space they work in.
Yeah. So let's shift and talk about this idea, Mark, of the hybrid workplace. It's seeing a lot more and more of it. It's becoming somewhat of a buzzword, I guess, and it sounds interesting, but at the same time, you can imagine all the different challenges that could come along with that if you're allowing part of your workforce to work remote and some in office. So the question I would have for you is if you as an organization are going to allow work from home, what are some of the primary questions that the organization should understand or ask themselves before?
I'll start by saying that I think that perhaps the majority of financial institutions are going to be adopting some sort of hybrid model, at least for a while. And I've got an opinion on this about, the jockeying or between employers and employees and figuring out what works. I think it's going to take years to really see where things settle and land. But I do think the majority are going to be adopting some form of a hybrid model. And so the question you need to answer is back to that strategy item. It's well, why are we going to do this? How does this benefit the organization? And I think primarily it probably maybe is, as I'll call it, an employee perk, but just because it's an employee perk doesn't mean it doesn't benefit the organization, right? Because if your employees find that they're spending less time commuting or they have more flexibility in their schedules, greater ability to focus from home, I think that is good for the organization as well. But what else? I mean, you may be able to find some greater productivity for your team out of a hybrid model, right? So if you have maybe a split between more collaborative tasks taking place in the office and then more individual productivity type tasks taking place at home, right? You might be able to find a good division, right? So you have different environments that are suited for different types of activities. You may find a reduction in space, though I think it's hard really, because you have to give up the individual spaces in the corporate office if you do want to have that reduction in space. But also things like you could access, a bigger talent pool, right? If you're in an expensive area, you might be able to access, better cost of living for your employees and, better options in the talent pool, right? By going remote. So I think you got to be really clear though on why you're doing it and not just have the solution be, well, employees want flexibility, so that's what we're going to do, right? I think you can be much more deliberate about this.
Yeah. Well, one thing I know a challenge for us in our own organization with all of this has been around maintaining that corporate culture throughout the crisis that we've been in the last 14 months. And I'm curious, as people implement or transition maybe toward a hybrid model, how do you see that impacting corporate culture? I can envision, to your point, employees jockeying against the organization or politics coming into play around which departments or employees should or can work from home. So do you see some big impacts that hybrid will have on culture?
Want to take that one, Jenny?
Yes, it can. I think we'll all need to be diligent in, again, I think it goes down to communication and just being more diligent about checking in with employees. And I guess I'm speaking more so to the first point of that question, Michael, around, how do you get newer employees to connect with company culture, or how do you make sure it doesn't erode when you're not seeing your same colleagues every single day? And I think it's being mindful and being diligent about checking in and not making communication too formal, and just having those moments where when you do see with somebody, to ask them about their weekend or to connect, different ways, I guess. And that can be done virtually or in person. But I think we all need to, again, not take things for granted and be more diligent about those kinds of connections with people. And I forgot where my second thought was going, so go ahead.
No, but I just agree. I think the point kind of is that's one of the major reasons you would have a hybrid approach rather than going fully work from home, I think, is because how concerned leaderships, team members are about having that cultural connection, how strong the culture is and how hard that is to sustain remotely. So, I mean, I think it's pretty clearly a big element, right? So if it is a big element of a hybrid environment or a hybrid approach, then you probably might even double down a bit on your use of spaces in the corporate office and be even more thoughtful about how those spaces can enhance the connection visually or through the way people work, right, to that culture.
Yeah, and that's a good lead in. The next question was really going to be around, with a hybrid model, if you in theory have more people working less days physically in the office, Jenny, how does that impact the amount of space and kind of the layout decisions that an organization might make in the office?
Well, to Mark's point, I think there will be more of a focus on what we call we spaces, or less, individual dedicated spaces, spaces where people can really connect and come together. Is going to be vital in offices of the future. There absolutely can be space savings found in a hybrid model. If desk sharing, less dedicated private offices, those types of environments go away, and if organizations are more comfortable moving to shared office or shared workspace environments, even adopting what we call activity-based working, where an employee can really choose their work environment for the day, whether that's in a small private space, whether that's out in the open, whether it's a mix of both those things in order to get their work done for the day. We'll see that really, I think, heavily adopted in the future. That said, though, we are seeing less of a focus on cramming as many people into a space or into a floor plate as possible, and allowing for people, to spread out more. I think there will be some lingering social distancing that people want to maintain post-pandemic, and we need to make sure our office environments can accommodate that. Pre-COVID, planning was all about square foot per person. And how efficient we can make a space. Now and into the future, I think space is going to be much more about flexibility, much more about spaces doing double duty and functioning for more than one user, and that any user can really walk into a space and really make it their own.
I have a lot of sympathy for you, Jenny, and for people who are, in HR and in the facilities department, and trying to take these big falutin concepts from the leadership team, right? Saying, oh yeah, we're going to do hybrid and we're going to do this and that. And then you have to say, well, what does that mean? Like, how much space do you need? What are you willing to give up? I know we've had some challenges with a few groups as we work through them, and they just have a hard time really committing, to the things they ask for, right? So one group says, oh, anyone can be remote forever if they want to, or they can come in the office if they want to. And we want to reduce our space, but everyone needs to have a space in the office. I'm like, okay, well, that doesn't make a ton of sense to us, but let's, try and unpack that and maybe go through some scenarios and see how that actually works. So I decided to add, I was thinking about this yesterday, how much harder your job must be right now than it has been in the past.
Yeah, I think before it was a much simpler math equation as to how we got to, like I said, square foot per person. I mean, we could easily unpack that pretty quickly for any organization. And now it's more about, okay, maybe this space does this one thing, but this space does these three things, and these 5 different people are going to use this space. And what does that actually look like?
Yeah. Well, we've talked a lot. In the interest of time, Mark, I think there were a few things we'd like to impart upon the attendees today. I was going to throw up one more slide, and there might be a nugget or two in here that folks can take with them that you might find helpful. So I'm just going to put up a few takeaways.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think, take it slow, be flexible. I mean, I've noticed that's what people we're working with are doing anyway. And I think that's good. I mean, nearly every employee is in a different situation. You've got kids, underlying conditions, frankly, psychological trauma. I think some people have been through in this situation. And so by going slow, you're going to give just more chance for the transition to be less jarring, right? But also a bigger chance to kind of hedge some more and see what your competitors are doing. I think there's going to be a lot of jockeying around this issue for a while. And I think I've said that a few times. Second item, just keep trusting your employees. I mean, the whole concept of working from home was founded in trust, right? You trust that your employees to make the right decisions to get their work done. You managed more around their output than around the work, the way they did the work. There's no reason this needs to end, right? So if you snatch that trust away, it's going to be, again, jarring for the employees. Communicate your intentions, including what you don't know. I mean, people make things up. If they, in the vacuum of information, your employees will always create their own information. That's classic managerial best practices, right? We talked this about a little bit. If your model is going to be a hybrid model, that's great. Just be really clear on what you hope to get out of that. Find ways to measure the things that you were hoping to get, and communicate this again to your employees. I mean, they're going to know, they'll be able to sense if you have a real cohesive, coherent plan or not around a hybrid work model. I think this one's really important. Try to find out what worked better for your employees at home, because that may be areas that you can improve in your corporate office, right? We've all become so used to some of these things at home that we're starting to even take them for granted, especially things like being able to have a phone call as loud as you want to, right? Or being able to shut the door and have absolutely zero interruption. Also, the ability to kind of personalize your own space and change your scenery, like mobility. We didn't really get into this today, but mobility and internal mobility, even in office building, is huge. It's really a large factor into employee engagement, performance, productivity, even like tenure, like duration of tenure at an organization. And then lastly, and Jenny hit on this, just give your employees a reason to want to return, right? I really believe that a great workplace environment goes hand in hand with a great organizational culture, right? Your workplace can absolutely be a place that helps your employees feel, well cared for, helps them feel special and kind of part of something, right? Makes them motivated and excited. So I hope, that's kind of what I hope you would take away from our discussion today. I want to ask Jenny, do you want to throw anything onto the pyre or onto the pile?
Of takeaways?
Yeah.
I think these are the big ones. Flexibility is key. I think we touched on it in the beginning. This is a big social experiment, right? And I think we see the importance of office in the future. We don't see office going away. It's just going to be a different office in the future, and we're all working together to figure out what that is. But I think without leaving that too open-ended, there are tidbits here, tactics here that we think will make that a thriving office environment in the future.
Excellent.
Okay. Well, yeah, we have a few minutes left, so we've had one or two questions come in, but if anyone has a question and would like to ask it, certainly feel free. The one question I do have in here, and Mark or Jenny can certainly take this, is what are some of the kind of mistakes or pitfalls you see organizations making or have made so far?
I've got one quick one is, I think making decisions, like really big decisions really early on without having the evidence. I mean, some folks that they've decided, yes, this entire group is for now and evermore going to be remote. And I think that the decisions were maybe made more on that individual's own personal experience in working remotely without really thinking enough about how other people experience it, because it's very different for a lot of people. Do you have any ideas, Jenny?
Yeah, I think organizations that just assume that they can, lift off the dust covers or whatever off the same, environment and have everybody come back to the same environment post-pandemic is going to be problematic. I think we need to learn and adapt from the pandemic and take all these, like we said, what worked really well at work from home and bring that more into the office environment. I think that could be the biggest short-sighted pitfall that any organization could make, is just maintaining status quo and keeping things as they've always been.
Yeah, kind of, hey, it's over, back to normal.
Okay.
Well, we're about out of time. One thing I wanted to post up a couple of resources here. There's certainly a lot of info. These are some of our favorite resources, both on our own blog as well as some of our partners like Leesman and Filene. So if you'd like a copy of this or want me to send you that, certainly ping us and let me know. I can send it to you. We will be posting a recording of this, so if you had to multitask or miss some of this, you can grab the recording off our blog. It'll probably be up in the next couple of days. And of course, we're always here, Mark, Jenny, and myself, or anyone on our team, if anyone has follow-on questions or wants additional resources, we're happy to provide those to you. But we really appreciate you taking 45 minutes out of your day and listening to the three of us ramble a little bit. But hopefully you got a few things out of it that might give you some ideas as you go forward.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Bye.